Aloha! Happy Saturday! Jen Boyd coming to you live from Honoka'a, Hawaii. Welcome, welcome. I hope that you are having an amazing weekend thus far. I know we're just into Saturday, but you know what? It's a choice, and so you should be having an awesome weekend. Absolutely should be having an awesome weekend already. All right, so let's get into this morning. What I wanted to talk about today. What I learned in my starter marriage, and I'm going to call it a starter marriage, okay? And the reason I'm calling it a starter marriage is because this was the beginning, right? It was my first marriage, and absolutely, you don't plan on your marriage being a starter anything. The intention is to join your life with someone else until you're not here anymore, right? Or until they're no longer here. It's meant to be permanent, but we have to be honest with ourselves. That isn't always the case. It's not always permanent. And there are lots of different reasons as to why marriages don't work out. And I have to say that I am now at a place in my life, and I have been for a while, and I think that that's why I've ended up where I've ended up now with such an amazing relationship. But you have to assume responsibility when there is responsibility to be placed, okay? You have to take responsibility for the actions that you took in the marriage, in the way you presented yourself in the marriage. Right off the bat, you have to take responsibility. So these are the things that now that I have had what I'm calling a starter marriage, and now that I'm in like such a remarkable relationship, I can look back now and see what I did wrong the first time around. And the cool thing about that is when you can objectively look at the role that you played in the demise of your relationship, you can then correct those things so that you can have a better relationship the next time around. Okay? So what I notice is that there are some people that won't assume any responsibility for the demise of their marriage. And because they won't accept any responsibility in the demise of their marriage, they continue the same behaviors that ruined the relationship the first time. Now, I'm a firm believer that it takes two to make a relationship work or to make a relationship just, fall apart. Okay, it takes two people. But I will say this, if one person is willing to look at themselves and see what it is that they bring to the relationship that could be better, that maybe it only takes one person to be truthful at the beginning, right? It takes one to be truthful at the beginning so that they can make it work. Now, it takes two people ultimately to do the same thing to make it work for the long term. But it only takes one person to put their step out of their comfort zone and say, hey, I can take responsibility for this. Okay? And sometimes it's like, do you remember in high school when you'd go to the dance and everyone was standing on the wall. No one wanted to be the first person on the dance floor. It's kind of like that, because once you had that bold person, and I have to tell you, it was usually me. But once you had that bold person that would just go out in the middle of the dance floor and dance their heart out, everyone else would come away from the wall and feel like it was okay for them to dance. Let me know if you're here, okay? Hop in, say hi, comment whether that makes sense to you, whether that analogy makes sense to you. Thanks, Jan. But it's kind of like that. It just takes one to like go, okay, I'm going to do this, right? And it's like that a lot in relationships. If one person will be honest about feelings, about accepting responsibility for maybe something that they could have done better. I'm not even going to say did wrong. I'm going to say something that they could have done better. Then what you'll find is that usually the other person, they'll follow suit. Okay. If you've ever watched my videos, I had a video that talks about how we treat people, we teach people how to treat us. And that is never more obvious than in relationships, okay? In romantic relationships that often may end up in marriage, okay? You teach people how to treat you from the beginning. And the thing is that when you find someone early on, a lot of times you're still growing as a person. I got married at a very young age. I was in my 20s, early 20s when I got married. And I have grown tremendously as a person since then. You don't kind of know what you're doing. You don't know who you are in your 20s. Most of us don't. I really didn't even feel like I had a grip on who I was until like my early to mid 30s. And by that point, I had already been married and divorced. I had raised my children. Like my children were almost, they were teenagers. And Aloha, I'm back. I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties. So I didn't have the computer plugged in and the battery died. So where were we? We were talking about the starter marriage. And what I was saying is that we have to take responsibility for our actions in the relationship. Okay. And like I said before, I was very young when I got into my first marriage. And I made a lot of decisions then. Looking back now, I made a lot of decisions then that there's no way I would do now. Okay. And people who know me now probably would be very surprised in some of the behavior that I participated in my first marriage. My husband, even now, like I say things, well, I did this before, or I remember hitting my husband at the time, yelling and cursing and being completely unreasonable and disrespectful to this person that I supposedly love. All right. I did those things and I can admit that I did those things, but I grew and now I know what is happening with this computer. It's like popping me out of my screens. So now I know what role I play in this relationship. So, what I encourage you to do, if you are in a relationship, you are struggling in that relationship, I challenge you to take a hard look at what you bring to the relationship. I challenge you to take a look at your level of transparency with your spouse, being honest and being able to have conversations are two of the most important things that you will do in your relationship. End of discussion as far as that part is concerned. Honesty and communication, right? The other thing that's really important is respect for one another. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. And you also treat people, or you should be treating people, how you want to be treated. So if you don't want someone to yell at you or call you names, don't do that in your relationship. Respect them enough to not say F you, right? Not to call them names, not to bring up things from their past and belittle them and make them feel less than. This is somebody that you want to share your life with. This is somebody that you say that you love. There are things that you can do to ensure that your marriage lasts. Okay? Honesty from the beginning. Be comfortable in your own skin. Be comfortable knowing who you are and showing that to the world. Because when you are just you and someone falls for you, there's no airs that you need to keep up. There's no facade that you need to keep up. When you pretend to be somebody that you're not, or you pretend to like something that you don't, or you do anything like that that's out of character for who you are, eventually you're not going to be able to keep that facade up anymore. All right. And when that facade falls away, is it fair to be angry with the other person because you deceived them? I don't think it is. I think that that's a reasonable response. I think that's an absolutely reasonable response to somebody who pretended to be something that they weren't in order to, I don't know, catch somebody. Have you heard of that? There's some people actually treat marriage like it's fishing, and they do certain things and carry themselves in certain ways and pretend to like something that they don't in order to catch a husband or to catch a wife. This isn't fishing. This is a relationship that you hope lasts a lifetime. So there are things that we need to do in order to ensure that it does. And sometimes we don't get it right the first time, but those lessons that you learn the first time around can benefit you in your next attempt at happiness. Okay? Learn from your mistakes. Take notes if you need to. Look back and go, what did I do? What was my role in this demise of a relationship, of a marriage? Okay? And even if your role was something as simple as allowing someone to treat you in a certain way, you still need to assume responsibility for that, because you teach people how to treat you. So if you were in an abusive relationship, I know this is a hard pill to swallow, but at some point you taught them how to treat you. And you said, it's okay if you abuse me, because you stayed, you tolerated it. You tolerated it the one time, and then the second time, and then the third time. So even if the relationship you were in was abusive, you must assume the responsibility of teaching that person how to treat you. All right, I could talk on this for a very long time. I have a lot of insight into this topic, and I might revisit this. I think I'd like to revisit this at some point when I remember to plug my computer in straight off the bat. So until Monday at 7 Hawaii Standard Time, have an amazing day, weekend, because you choose to. Okay? I hope to see you Saturday, 7 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. And then again on Sunday at 10 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time for Tough Talk 911, which I co-host with my friend Sherry Adams. And this week we are going to talk about much debated, can you love someone and not like them? So that is Sunday at 10 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. I hope to see you there. Until then, aloha.